Welcome back to another week of the NFL Injury Report. We're getting ready for Week 5 in the NFL, and unfortunately this past week there were several injuries, including one of the more gruesome knee injuries that I can remember from recent history, aside from Nick Chubb's from a couple of years ago. That's going to be our main focus today, but before we get to that, we're going to go through a couple of other people that we've been keeping an eye on and some new ones as well. So, looking at Jaden Daniels, he's missed the past 2 weeks now with that knee sprain. He practiced well on Saturday, I've heard, and it looks like he's going to return to action in Week 5. Also for Washington, Terry McLaurin seems to be trending in the right direction as well, coming back from that quad injury he suffered 2 weeks ago against the Raiders, I believe it was. He is trending towards playing as well. So hopefully for Washington, they're able to get their QB1 and wide receiver 1 back this week, which would be a huge boost for that offense. Couple of other quarterbacks. Brock Purdy, he was going into this past week still nursing that toe injury. He's now back on the injury report with some soreness through that toe after playing this past week in that loss to the Jaguars. It's something to keep an eye on. If you already missed a couple of weeks before it prior, and then it seems to be flaring up again, it's unclear if he's going to play or not. So if he's rostered in your fantasy team, make sure you pay attention to that. Put up decent numbers last week, but clearly they're not the same team that they were even a couple of years ago. So struggling a little bit with that toe. Lamar Jackson, unfortunately, pulled his hamstring in the game against the Chiefs. He left early. Cooper Rush took over, and we all know how that went. But Lamar is on the injury report. He did not practice at all so far this week as of this recording. It's likely that he's going to miss Week 5, but they haven't given a lot of information about the severity. But right now, assume that he's at least going to miss the next 2 to 3 weeks minimum. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver for the Titans, he's an interesting case. He got injured in the game this past week on Sunday against the Texans, and then came back in for a couple of drives, and then all of a sudden disappeared through most of the fourth quarter. His snaps were dialed back as it came out due to the injury that he suffered. So it's unclear of if they just took him out to be a little bit more safe or if it was more severe than what they thought. His injury is still undisclosed at the time of this recording, but something to pay attention to as the Titans offense is already struggling. Calvin Ridley was one of the few volume bright spots that you knew you could get some points from. But if his snaps are going to be dialed back or if he's just not going to play, obviously don't want him to be starting on your roster this week. Myles Garrett is day-to-day with an ankle injury, the defensive tackle for the Browns. Similarly, offensive tackle Jack Conklin is day-to-day with an elbow injury. Something to keep an eye on through the week, but no details as far as severity goes for them either. Malik Neighbors tore his ACL in the Giants game this past week. It's going to be up to Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, and some of the other receivers in that room to make up the difference. But he is done for the season with a torn ACL. Based on the timeline of when it happened, the hope is that he will be ready for next year at the start of the season, but he is officially done. Bucky Irving, the standout running back for the Bucs, who had a great rookie season and continues to just play really, really well, super explosive. He was dealing with a lower leg injury. He was actually spotted in a boot and crutches during Wednesday practice. Although no official report has been made as far as what the actual injury is or the severity, it is not looking like he's trending in the right direction to play on Sunday. So instead of Bucky Irving, it's going to be a mix of Rachaad White and any of the other running backs in that room, but White is expected to be the main lead back now that Irving is likely to be out. So another injury that occurred in the Jets-Miami game was running back Braylon Allen for the New York Jets. I like to call him the tank. Massive guy for a running back. But right after fumbling on the goal line, unfortunately, and dashing all my hopes early in that game, he took a pretty nasty hit on a kickoff return to that knee, and he is being placed on IR with an MCL sprain. Does not seem that he fully tore that MCL, but he's at least going to miss the next 4 weeks while nursing that MCL. Now, Tyreek Hill. Like I said earlier, one of the more unfortunate injuries and more severe injuries that I've seen in the NFL over the past couple of years, aside from Nick Chubb and Aiden Hutchinson over the past 1 and 2, I think, actually. But he officially dislocated his knee against the New York Jets while being tackled out of bounds. And When you dislocate a knee, commonly what's thought of is that patella that will dislocate. In his case, what he actually did was separate the tibiofemoral joint capsule of the knee. So the two bones that make up your lower leg and then the top one, he dislocated those. And what happens whenever you do dislocate your knee in that way is it usually leads to a multitude of different structural injuries. The most commonly thought of being your ACL, MCL, LCL, or PCL, those main ligaments that surround the knee, as well as possibly your meniscus and your knee cartilage itself, which definitely takes a little bit longer to heal. However, you can also have injury to the joint capsule. You can break and fracture some of those bones. But most importantly, the biggest concern is the blood supply and nerve supply in that area around the knee. So through your knee, through the back of that knee, you have a major artery as well as several nerves that are running through that area. The artery is called your popliteal artery, and what it looks like is this. So this is the back of the knee right here. You can see you have this major artery right here. That's that popliteal artery. And then here is where nerve branches into becoming the tibial nerve, and then also coming out and becoming the peroneal nerve, where it then splits around the fibular head on the outside of your knee. So when you dislocate your knee, what happens is you can shear and pull and ultimately tear some of those arteries and nerves in the back of your knee. And now that is immediately going to require emergency surgery as well as delay the timeline for recovery. Hill is expected to miss the rest of the season, and he's looking at a recovery likely up to a year, but definitively somewhere between 6 to 12 months minimum. So not only is he done for the season, but he may not be ready to start playing at the season opener next year as well. So like I was saying, if there was some type of vascular or neural involvement, surgery would have to be performed first to take care of that. After that, he would have to be immobilized and braced for somewhere around 6 weeks, give or take, allowing that artery and nerve to heal properly, particularly the arteries. Now, they came out and it wasn't super specific, but they did say that there was no vascular or nerve involvement, there were no fractures, which is all really, really good. So thankfully, he doesn't have to worry about that first part. What he does have to go through is the second part, where he has to have the surgery to repair all of those ligaments, and then if there was other damage to the menisci or the cartilage. Allegedly, there's no damage to the cartilage either. It's just he tore multiple ligaments, including his ACL, but it was not specific as far as aside from that ACL. His protocol is going to be very similar to, for example, an ACL rehab protocol, where he's going to have the surgery, he'll be braced, he'll be immobilized for a little while, and then slowly working on range of motion, and then working towards strength, stability, power, and then ultimately sport-specific activities looking at plyometrics, speed, and acceleration, especially for him, where he has made most of his career based off of how fast he is. His recovery will be more complicated to just an ACL rehab though, because there's multiple ligaments involved, as well as just the fact that there's likely some damage to that joint capsule as well. So his recovery timeline will be a little bit longer. He will have to consider multiple ligaments in his rehab, but it'll be really interesting to see how he is able to return back from this. He already said that he plans on playing at some point next year based off of how he progresses through his rehab. But for an athlete who is unfortunately in his 30s, he's 31 this year, he'll be 32 at the start of next season. For an athlete who has made his name off of speed, this can be a pretty devastating injury. Hopefully he'll be able to come back even faster, but that is a little bit more detail about what dislocating your knee is like and what Tyreek Hill is going to not only currently go through, but as he continues over the course of this next year. So that is the NFL Weekly Injury Report coming into Week 5. As always, let me know what you think down in the comments, if there's anyone specific that I didn't talk about that you want to hear about for next time, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.